In this episode, we are going to continue talking about the MacBooks. If you're in the market for a new MacBook, we're going to go pro in this episode as we talk about what I call the real MacBook Pros. My name is Luke Clayton. Welcome to Church Media HQ. Welcome back. I'm glad to have you here. Make sure you're subscribed specifically to our YouTube channel because we are going to be dropping some YouTube exclusive content. And I'll go ahead and give you a little bit more info about what that is exactly. So we have been releasing coaching series. I'll do a coaching series every once in a while about a specific topic. And our latest coaching series is going to be exclusive to YouTube. So make sure that you're subscribed there at youtube.com/mustincrease. It may already be up by the time this episode releases, and so be sure to check that out, youtube.com/mustincrease. All right, so last time we talked about if you're in the market for a new MacBook, which one should you get? We talked about the MacBook Air line and what I call the fake MacBook Pro, the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar that's not really a MacBook Pro. We compared them, kind of talked about the differences between them. And so now we are going to talk about the true MacBook Pros. These are the ones that Apple released, it would have been last fall, so fall of 2021. And these are incredible machines. I can tell you because I use one. Again, like I said in the last episode, we're producing 30 to 60 minutes of video content any given week here between what we do for our podcast, for YouTube channel, for other churches. And so this is something that it was like, hey, we got to do something. We got to get something beefier. And so we went with one of these new MacBook Pros. And I'll talk a little bit about what maybe mine here in particular in a minute. But all that aside, I want to talk about the new MacBook Pro. And to be clear, to go back to my screen sharing again, if you are not watching, you might want to check out our YouTube version of the show so that you can see the visuals. But I'll describe it for the audio listeners. We've got here on the left, you see the MacBook Pro 13-inch. That is the fake MacBook Pro, not a real MacBook Pro. Here on the right, we have the MacBook Pro 14 and 16-inch. And so let's talk about what that entails exactly today. And so to give you just a high-level kind of overview, let's see. The MacBook Pro, again, comes in, as you saw, the 14-inch and 16-inch configurations. Here's the nice thing about it, though. Really, other than screen size and a little bit of battery life improvement, because when the 16-inch one, it's a little bit bigger, so they can fit a little bit more battery into it. Other than that, the performance options in terms of speed and upgrades and all of that is the same. It's exactly the same. It just doesn't matter whether you want a 14-inch or 16-inch. There is no difference. You can upgrade either one exactly the same. So these come with either the M1 Pro or the M1 Max chips made by Apple. These are insanely powerful in terms of performance. Mine does have the M1 Max, and I did that so that I could get a higher level so I could max out the RAM on this machine, and it is just incredibly fast. When I go to export content and finalize it I use Premiere Pro for editing, it is lightning fast. Even episodes like this that are 20, 25, sometimes 30 minutes long, exporting it takes really just minutes and sometimes seconds. It is truly blazing fast, incredible performance. And so it comes with, because of these improved chips, you can get up to 64 gigs of memory or RAM, and you can actually get up to 8 terabytes of storage, that's a ton of storage. I got the 1 terabyte configuration and the 64 gigs of RAM, but you can get up to 64 gigs. It starts at 16 gigs all the way up to 64 gigs of RAM. You do have to get the M1 Max chip if you want the 64 gigs, but it is available to get that much RAM. And this one has a an all new design, whereas opposed to that fake Pro has a, maintains the older MacBook design that they've been using for several years now. This one has an all new design. It's a little bit more of a it's a little bit thicker, but that's okay because it's got so much more in it. So it's a little bit thicker. It's got a little bit more of a kind of a square, boxy look to it, but I really love the design of it. It kind of, if you remember maybe the old, I believe they were the PowerBooks in the early 2000s, it's kind of like a streamlined version of that. I actually really like it. That was something I really don't think about much when I go to purchasing new stuff. Like I want stuff to be, in this case, I want it to be portable. I want it to be something that I can, easily put in my bag and so forth. But I don't really overthink the design part of it. It was one of those things when I got it and unboxed it and actually actually saw the design. It really is awesome, and I really do love it. And so it's got that new design there. This one has, like I said, either the 16 or the 14, either one has 3 USB-C ports. Technically, they're Thunderbolt 4 ports, I believe, but they'll work with Thunderbolt, Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4, USB-C. It does have an audio port, and it does have the MagSafe. So you've got the magnetic charger. And then it's also got, they've brought back to this version of the MacBook, they brought back the HDMI and the SD slot. Now, this is a very welcomed addition. They took it away from the MacBook Pro for several years, and they've brought it back in this version. Now, admittedly, I got used to using it without any of the extras. So, admittedly, I have a dock for the MacBook Pro that you can plug in. It does have the MagSafe, but I can plug in the charger. Or when I plug in my dock, rather, it automatically charges it as well, and it automatically connects all my displays. So I only really use that HDMI whenever I am, maybe traveling, but there have been times where I'm out and about and I'm traveling, I need to do a presentation. You can just plug in the HDMI. That is really nice. Also, if you're at a hotel, I always have an HDMI cable in my bag, so I can plug my computer into the TV there and watch movies and whatever, stream stuff. It is really nice to have. And then the SD slot, definitely, again, something that I use. When I plug in my dock, I have an SD reader and, as part of that dock. And so I don't necessarily need it when I'm at home, but on the go, it is nice to have. Also, something I've done is I have added a little external or a little small flat SD card there that kind of gives me a terabyte extra of storage. That's probably another tip for another time, but hey, I'm just letting you know how I use it because this is the computer that I have. So those are the ports that it has. It has a Liquid Retina XDR display. Now, there are basically 3 classes of display on Apple's MacBooks in particular. They have, and I think it also goes to their mobile devices, but they have the Retina, the Liquid Retina, and the Liquid Retina XDR. Now, there is a lot of very complicated science and technology behind each of these, and I'm not going to dive into what all that means, but I will say the XDR display is their highest level display. If you would want to buy, I believe it's their 32-inch version of their XDR screen, it costs $4,000 or $5,000. It's incredibly expensive, and they've built that same display technology into both these 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. And I will say, it's a beautiful display. It is noticeably better than what I used before on MacBook Airs and previous versions of the MacBook there. So it does have a really good display. And the M1 Max, if you max out the chip on there with what they call the M1 Max, it supports up to 4 external displays natively, so you can plug one basically into each port, into each of the 3 USB-C or Thunderbolt 4 ports, and then in the HDMI port, you can have all 4 displays. And then it also has 17 hours of battery on the 14-inch, which you'll notice for a much higher performing machine, that's only 1 hour less than on the MacBook Airs, which has a efficiency. Those chips are made for efficiency and really to give you maximum battery. But even on these maximum power chips, you're still getting 17 hours of battery. And again, I've never maxed it out to that before, but I will spend several hours on just battery power any given day, and it does just fine. On the 16-inch, you're going to get up to 21 hours of battery, which is the most in any MacBook. And so So across the board, these are incredible. For all the bad things I have to say about the 13-inch MacBook Pro, Apple does make up for it in the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. Now, price is going to cause some to choke, understandably so, because again, this is a true MacBook Pro. It is for professionals. If you are not, I would go as far as to say, if you are not someone who is producing a lot of video, you probably will be fine to not even touch this lineup. And we'll dive into that a little bit more later. But the price does start at $199, so $2,000. And when you max it out, you're going to be spending $6,100 if you were to max it out. That means max out the go with the M1 Max chip, 64 gigs of RAM, and the 8 terabytes of storage. The storage is really where it starts to add up. I almost maxed mine out. What the only thing is I kind of took a shortcut on is I didn't go technically with the full maximum chip. I went with, they have like, I think 4 levels. I went with the one below. And then, yeah, I was good with just a terabyte of storage. And so I didn't even consider, I mean, it is crazy how much adding more storage really adds into the price, but that is the price range. So let's do a little compare here. So here's what I want to show you here. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Got my screen pulled up. Again, if you are not watching, I'll do my best to describe, but you might want to check out our YouTube channel so that you can follow along here. So I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison of the MacBook Pro. You can do this right on Apple's website. The MacBook Pro, what they call a Pro, but I don't believe is a Pro, the 13-inch, the latest one, and then the MacBook Pro 14-inch and 16-inch. So this just really highlights how non-pro the one that they're calling the MacBook Pro 13-inch with Touch Bar is. So let's go down. So first of all, you've got on your cores here, and the CPU cores means your kind of base level computer processing cores. You've got 8 cores on the 13-inch. You got up to 10 cores on both the 14 and 16. That doesn't seem like a huge difference, but it is. When it comes to the GPU, so the graphics, this has to do with graphics performance and processing. 10 core is the max on the 13-inch. 32 core is the match on 14 and 16-inch. That is a massive difference. When it comes to the memory, you can max the 13-inch MacBook Pro at 24 gig. 64 gig, so 40 gigs extra. You can go up to 40 gigs extra if you do the MacBook Pro 14-inch or 16-inch. On the storage, 2 terabytes is the max on the 13-inch. 8 terabytes is the max on the 14 and 16-inch. Battery life is about the only thing that the MacBook Pro 13-inch wins out on because it has up to 20 hours as opposed to 17 or 21 on the 14 or 16. But again, that is actually not a good thing because what that proves is that this MacBook Pro 13-inch is made for efficiency, not for performance. It's choosing to optimize your battery life over your power, and that's not what you want in a Pro machine. We could continue to look at all this down here. This gets very technical as I get down to really how they explain how all the chips and stuff works. But look at this down here. You don't even have the option to do any further performance on things like the hold up, where are we at? Sorry, lost my place there. Oh yeah, all this stuff like the neural engine, the 32 core GPU. I know a lot of the stuff is really technical, but just notice again when you're comparing that things like a media engine aren't even available on the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Again, proves my point that this 13-inch is not a MacBook Pro. If you want a MacBook Pro, a true MacBook Pro that's made for power-heavy tasks, you want a MacBook Pro 14 or 16-inch, and literally the only difference is going to be the screen size. And so, again, that is a very useful comparison. And so now let's talk a little bit about which one is right for you. So I'm talking about, we're going to talk about Pros, but we're also going to talk about the 16-inch as well, or sorry, 16-inch, the 13-inch Air as well. So really we're going to look at this of if you're a power user or if you are a standard user. So first of all, let's talk about if you are a standard user. And I've got another screen moment here where I'm going to show my screen. So let's do that. So if you are a standard user, well, and here's what, before I get to that in particular, something in general to remember is that I really am a big believer that base models are generally a bad idea. This is another thing I think that Apple kind of fails on is that they decide to really have their base model machine start out at something that is going to not be adequate many times in storage, and it's going to be something that is not very future proof. And so for that reason, I'm really never going to recommend a base model. Here's the thing. Apple in general is just more expensive. I think everybody knows that. We're talking about, Apple MacBooks here. We're not talking about PCs. I haven't been a PC user in over a decade now, and so I'm never going back to PC. I highly doubt I would. And I mean, I guess you should never say never, but again, I highly doubt that's ever going to happen. So I can't speak to PCs much, but here's what I have found about MacBooks. They are, and Apple stuff in general, it is better quality. It does last longer. Therefore, you are getting what you pay for. That said, it's kind of, I kind of see it the same way that I do whenever I go to, for example, let's look at this. It's kind of a silly analogy, but whenever I take my daughter out for ice cream, okay, we're going to get ice cream. Now I'll go to these places that have, hey, sugar-free ice cream and whatever. Look, here's the deal. I understand the value of taking care of yourself and not eating junk and whatever all the time. But again, I don't always go to ice cream. I mean, I take my daughter to get ice cream every month or two at most. So it's one of those things. It's like I don't come here for my health, and so I'm not going to get something sugar-free. I'm not going to try to get something that's light and low calorie. No, it's ice cream. You're just going to go all out on it. And I kind of look at the same way, the same analogy. It makes sense to me. It might not make sense to you. I look at the same way when it go to buy a quality tech product of any kind, particularly from Apple. I try to look at Apple as like, I'm not coming to Apple because it's just like I'm not going to ice cream to find something diet friendly. I'm not going to purchase from Apple, especially when it comes to computers, because I'm looking for something budget friendly. No, I'm looking for something good, something quality, and something that is going to meet my needs, but also last me a long time. So that's why I'm not a big fan of base models. So nothing I'm going to recommend here is actually base models. If you're looking to be budget friendly, then you don't need to be looking at Apple, in my opinion. But if you do care more about performance and longevity and things like that, spending the few $100 to upgrade beyond the base model is going to be so worth it. So all that said, let's share my screen here once more. So here we are looking at the MacBook Air. Okay, so I'm going to look at this from three perspectives. First is from what I would call the standard, actually four perspectives. So first of all, I'm going to call you just the standard user. This is going to be probably 70% of, 70, probably more like 90% of people out there. And so what I'm going to do, honestly, even though this new M2 MacBook Air is out, when I think about balancing what you are getting cost-wise with the performance increase. Again, as I said in the last episode, this M2 chip and this second generation is just an incremental difference. So it's not noticeable enough for me to say you should go ahead and get this now. So I would say let's go with the MacBook Air M1. So let's click buy on this. Now, how are we going to build this out? Okay, well, let's go ahead and choose select here. And here's where I would, here's what I would go. Now, this is the base model. Now, you'll notice that there are two, actually, I should have done this. Let's go back here. Let's actually choose, I'm sorry, I am desperately confusing myself. Oh, that's what happened. Okay, so sorry, for those of you listening, you're horribly confused. If you're watching, you're probably almost equally as confused. I just realized this. So it does look like Apple's now they've made the M1 Mac. You used to have the ability to upgrade the chip. Looks like they've phased that out. And so you don't have the option to get anything but technically the slightly lower performance chip. Not a big deal, honestly, because it's literally a one-core difference. It's something, again, that's going to be virtually unnoticeable. So this doesn't really change my approach. I just now caught that, though, as I'm going through and building this out. So here's what I would do. Now, I would not yell at you for sticking at 8 gigs of RAM, but I would say if you've got the extra $200, let's go with the 16 gigs. Again, I'm not gonna say you're a total moron for going with the 8 gig, but what you're gonna find is that I believe for future proofing and longevity, that the 8 gig, it's going, because what's gonna happen is apps and programs for the Mac are going to more and more lean towards being more resource intensive. It's just what has happened now for years. And so eventually you will find that probably in the next, I would say 2, 3, maybe up to 4 years, you're going to find that your 8 gigs is going to feel very sluggish. So that's why I would just go ahead, spend the extra $200 with the 16 gigs. I'm going to say the same thing with storage. You're going to want at least 512. I don't see 256 working out for you long term at all. It does not. You'll be surprised, especially if you're doing anything with anything at all. Like even if you're just downloading Photoshop files or downloading to watch movies. I'm not even talking about doing editing and stuff. I'm just talking about just using it. 256 gigs is not going to get you very far. And you have to remember, with these MacBook Air and even the fake MacBook Pro, you don't have any of those SD slots. So you can't do that little hack that I talked about where you plug in the SD card. You can't do that. You can't expand the storage down the road. There's no way to do it. And so therefore, I say go with 512 and you'll be fine with that as well. Now, I'm going to throw this out there too. I'm going to talk about other configurations here in a moment, but this is what I had for a year. And this configuration, the only difference was I did upgrade to a terabyte of solid state storage there, but this is what I had for a year. And I can tell you, it was awesome. No, it didn't render quite as fast. Yes, I do believe that it was a wise choice for me to upgrade, but this was an incredible machine. And I was doing stuff way beyond the standard user. I mean, again, doing Photoshop and Premiere Pro, editing and exporting videos all the time. It really, again, I never had an issue with it. So this is an incredible machine. This is what I would get for the standard user. Yes, $1,400. Okay, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than that. It might be $1,300 if you can get an educational discount. But this is if you bought this right now, if you take care of it, make sure that don't drop your computer and all that good stuff. I would say it's going to last you for 5 years. I would be very surprised, again, if you take care of it for the standard user. Now, if you're putting a lot of use on it, like video and graphics and things like that, no. But if you're just doing the standard user, opening your email, doing other stuff like that, I would say that you're going to be very happy with this particular configuration, and it's going to last you a long time. So that is what I would get, again, for just that. That's the baseline of what I would get. Again, I'm not going to yell at you if you want to save $200 and get 8 gigs of memory, but in that case, be prepared for it to only last you 2 to 3 years before you start to feel that it's sluggish. And yeah, if you try to go to 256 within 6 to 12 months, you are going to fill that hard drive up, and you are going to wish that you had more storage. You're going to have to buy a new machine just to upgrade your storage. Be in a situation where always feeling like you have to offload files onto an external or on the cloud. It's just not a fun place to be in. So this is my recommended configuration. $1,400 to last you for 5 years. I think that is worth it there. So that is talking about if you are someone who is, like I said, a standard user, or like I said, even if you're a Lite Pro, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Lite Pro configuration here right now, but even if you were on the Lite Pro, like you would still be very fine with this, but just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and give you my recommended configuration for if you did decide to go with the MacBook Air M2, the latest version. And the only reason I would go with this is if you are, like I said, what I call a Lite Pro, like you are using Photoshop a little bit, maybe you're editing an occasional video that you might shoot on your phone here and there. And so what I would say is, yeah, let's go ahead, let's get my screen back up here. Let's go with the MacBook Air M2, the latest generation. And then let's just start with the base model here and let's build it out. Now, again, to save you a little bit of cost, you would be completely fine with sticking with this 2-core difference. It's just a 2-core difference of having the 10-core GPU. I think you would be fine doing that. And so therefore, just because I know we're trying to be budget friendly, I'm actually going to leave that there. If it were me personally, yeah, I'd get the extra speed. But again, I wouldn't be getting this one anyways because I'm going pro. So I'm trying to filter that out and keep that in mind. And so then again, though, for this for sure, I'm going to go with 16 gigs. No doubt I'm going with 16 gigs if I'm going to be doing anything on this machine that is going to be considered a slightly resource intensive. I'm all about more RAM. So if you want to go with 24 gigs, go for it. But I'm going to go with this recommended 16 gigs. And that's the same with storage, 512. And so what you're looking at there is what was the other one? The other one was about 1,300. Now you're looking at 1,600, so a $300 difference. And you are getting a slightly faster core, but really not by much. Again, so that's why I say this is really only if you are, maybe that light pro that wants to do a little more. Still, though, I think you're going to be very happy with even the previous generation M1. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the MacBook Pro. If you want to go Pro, and by a Pro, I'm going to talk about someone who is what I'd call a video pro. Okay, so you are doing a significant amount of video. Maybe you're working with 4K footage. Maybe you're not just shooting on your phone. You actually have like a mirrorless or DSLR camera or something like that. Okay, so here is what I am going to recommend here. Again, stay away from this fake MacBook Pro. I can't emphasize it enough. It's fake. It's not a real Pro. We're going to go with the real Pro, the 14 or the 16 inch. Now, again, screen size is going to affect the price here. I'm more than happy. I have the 14 inch. I'm more than happy with that. I personally think 16 inch is too big. It feels like it'd be too heavy. It's almost 5 pounds. So I actually like this for portability purposes. And so we can actually select let's just start right here with what would be the base model of 2000, starting at 2000. That's not where we're going to stay, but that's where it's going to start. Now, again, we're going with if you're the Lite Pro. Okay, well, you're going to get away with having the lower M1 Pro. That's going to be fine, but I would upgrade the memory. For sure, upgrade the memory to 32 gigs. The 16 gigs, in my opinion, I don't even know if I classify that as pro level. I know they have it available there on a true pro machine, but I don't classify it as pro at all. So 32 gigs is the minimum there that I would get. And then you're probably fine with the 512, but especially if you're using a lot of 4K footage, that's going to go fast. So maybe if you've got the budget, go up to a terabyte, but get the nice thing about this one is it does have the SD card slot on the slide. You could do, or on the side rather, you could do the little hack I was talking about where you've got the flat little SD card that gives you up to a terabyte of extra storage. So maybe you decide to do that, but you would get away with having 512. And as you see here, you're at $2,400. So, I mean, really for $2,400, and again, this machine, all these machines I'm saying are going to last you for 5 years, maybe a little bit less if you're a pro user, maybe more like 3 to 4, just depending on how much use you put on it. Yeah, so really that's not that bad there. I'll also throw this out. I don't see the option on here, but I believe once you continue to build it out, they give you the option to get some Apple Care. I'm usually not a big fan of warranties, but Apple Care has proven to be pretty valuable, and they pretty much offer a way to get Apple Care for life now on these machines, and so I would recommend looking into that. So that's if you're a Lite Pro. Now let's go ahead and talk about, while we're here, if you are what I call a Video Pro. That means you are using a lot of 4K. You are doing video. What I would say you're doing video. Well, actually, let's look at this way. You're doing a lot of 4K, but you're producing, like I said, kind of like what we're doing over here. You're producing, 60-ish minutes of content any given week. Maybe some weeks are heavier than others, but will not be a week that goes by very often where you're not producing 30 to 60 minutes of content, video content that is. And so that's where I do think that you're gonna want to go up to at least this M1 Max with the 10 core, and that is where I do like what I did, going to the 64 gig and then at least a terabyte of storage, if not more. That is going to be, and again, yes, this is a hefty machine, but again, you got to think about all the use that you're getting out of it. Again, the longevity of the product, it's going to last for, I would say, 3 to 5 years, even as a pro user. And so this is what I recommend if you're a very high level, what I would say a top level pro, and that you're doing a ton of video content, obviously all the Photoshop and even high level web development, that would all run super smoothly on this computer right here. So that is that is kind of what I recommend. Again, if you didn't watch, I hope that you were able to follow along as best as possible by me just doing kind of descriptions. But so maybe go back, check out this episode on video so that you can watch there and see the recommended MacBook product. If you're in the market for a new MacBook, I didn't talk about desktops. Maybe I'll do that down the road. But if you're in the market for a new actual MacBook, let's keep in mind some of the things we talked about. Stay away from that fake MacBook Pro. It is not a MacBook Pro. There's no world where you need that. You either will be fine with the Air, or if you really want to go Pro, you need to go through the true 14 or 16-inch Pro. And again, you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed wherever you're listening to podcasts. But speaking of watching this content, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you haven't started seeing it yet, we are having YouTube exclusive content. The next coaching series is going to be exclusive to YouTube, and it's going to be I believe it's going to be really helpful. It's the most in-depth series that I have done yet, and what it's designed to do is to help you, no matter where you're at, to get started in your media and to continually improve and upgrade. And so I really think that if you find this content helpful, you're definitely going to find that helpful, but it's available only on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/mustincrease. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I am really glad to have your church as a part of what we're doing here, and increasing truth, inspiring hope, and of course, sharing that with others. And I'm so excited that you're a part of that. And until next time, my name is Luke Clayton, and I hope to see you in the next episode right here on Church Media HQ.